In this session, we are going to work on the implementation part. And like always, I'll expect you all to do it side by side. And for that, definitely, I need responses from the participants side by side. I'm not sure if any of you will be doing it side by side, but still, I expect an interactive session again. And for this case study, I'll be using a pneumonia dataset, which is available online. So I'll be getting it directly from a URL that I'll be sharing with all of you as well if you want to do it side by side. So the very first task I'll do here is to import some necessary libraries. I'll put all the instructions side by side for you so that you can understand the process behind. The idea here is to demonstrate the use of deep learning algorithm for pneumonia disease detection, and that we are going to do with chest x-ray images. And for this, first we need few essential libraries that I'll be utilizing further. Few of these libraries you might have already used in different types of case studies that you have done with other experts also in this course, and few of them may be new for you. So I'm just putting them in sequence over here, and I'll explain parts in step as well. This OS library I'll need for creating different directories from my dataset that I'll be getting from online source. NumPy I'll be using for any kind of numerical manipulation. Matplotlib I'll use for the plotting purpose on my end results. If time permits, definitely then we'll plot them as well. TensorFlow I'll use as a framework for building my CNN model. I'll not use a very extensive deep learning model here. Depending upon the time available, I'll create a basic CNN model to achieve our pneumonia disease detection application. Then from TensorFlow environment, I'll go to Keras, and from here I'll just try to get the pre-processing repository so that I can pre-process my X-ray images because they come with so many annotations, etc. So we may need to remove that. So I'll use a data generator from pre-processing library. It will also help me to augment my dataset, to resize it, or to create different versions of X-ray images for better training of our model. Then we'll go to TensorFlow, Keras, and models repository. From there, I'll take sequential model. If you have worked on CNN in previous cases, in previous days, probably you might be already aware of this. Sequential model is one of the most basic type of CNN model we can use. Then I'll take up some layers for my CNN model that will include convolution 2D, MEX pooling 2D on the first day of the course. Probably you might have gone through these layers when some experts introduced you with the CNN layer. So those layers only I'm calling here, and I'll be utilizing them to create my model. And then from sklearn matrices repository, I'll get up classification, report, and confusion matrix. We can try other parameters also depending upon how much time you have. So later on you can try others also. So these are the essential libraries that I need in this case, and I'll just first load each one of them. And then we'll proceed further to get data from Kaggle platform. And this pneumonia dataset is available on Kaggle as well as on Mendeley repository. So you can take it from anywhere. In my case, I'll take it from Mendeley repository directly because there it is in much well organized manner. So for that, what I'll do here is I'll put up a task here, set data path to get pneumonia dataset, or simply set path to get pneumonia dataset. I'll write here. So for this, as I told you, I'll get data directly from a URL. So for this, I'll need wget package from Python repository. So first I'll install this. This wget may not be available by default on Google Colab platform. So I'm first installing it, and then I'll be deploying it here. So for this, I'll write wget, and inside this, I'll just pass information about the repository that I want to create. That will be a zip file I'm getting from Mendeley platform, and this is the data source that I'll be using. So I'm just copying this right here, and I'll put it inside inverted commas. So a zip file basically named chest x-ray we are trying to get from this platform. And after this, we'll try to extract the dataset because this is in the zip file format. So we may need to extract it. For this, I may need zip file function for the extraction purpose. So with zip file function, I can work on the zip file directly, and the name of the zip file that I have already created is this one. So I'll pass it inside, and then I'll write here R to read this zip file. If you are creating a zip file, you can write W in that case, but we are reading a zip file first to extract data from it. So I'm using this technique for the same. Once we have obtained this zip reference from the initial reading process, then we will extract all the data from this particular zip folder, and that I'll put inside chest x-ray file further. So it will again create a folder. So we'll write here extract data to chest x-ray folder. This is basically we are trying to do. Currently, if you want to observe, you can observe here I have no data, only sample data is there. This chest x-ray data is not available. So as soon as I'll run this part, it should bring out our data set, and we'll print this portion once the data set is downloaded and extracted successfully. So let me run this. If we don't have any typo, it should load our data set immediately. You can see it is loading this zip file, and this zip is created now, you can observe, and then it will do extraction process also, and the zip x-ray will be created as a separate folder inside. So we'll have to wait for a while as it proceeds with the process, because depending upon the size of data, it will take some time to update your repositories. This is fast enough, so I can see 100%. Okay, but zip file attribute it could not find. Let me check that if I have some typo. Yes, so I need to put this F as capital. So up to this, it is already done. So I'll just comment it so that it can run the extraction process only, because this downloading process is already done. So I'll rerun it. It here, and within this folder now, you can see there is a inside folder on chest x-ray, and here we have train and test dataset, and this includes x-ray images with normal and pneumonia for both training and testing dataset. These you can observe. So this is the directory we have created right now with x-ray data. So you can observe this data currently contains only training and testing file. We don't have validation dataset in this folder, but we can create that also. It is possible to create one more directory here that could have your validation dataset. Although you can proceed directly also, but still many of you would like to learn how we create a validation repository. So that I can show you quickly here, and then we'll proceed further with processing of these three sections of data. So for this, what I'll do is, once we have loaded the data set, we have extracted the data set, then I'll create here a validation data directory. And inside this, I'll need this OS I have already imported. I'll need two more things. One is random, because I'll be getting random files from these different sections. And one more repository that I'll need is shuttle repository, and it will help me to create my source and destination files when I extract my validation directory. So this one more library we need to import initially. After this, I'll pass here path to the directories, and for this what we can do is validation directory I'll be creating. Observe one thing here. Initially, when I have shown you this data set, it contains training and testing files. But now what we need is we need one more extra thing, that is validation. And that validation repository we generally create by extracting some data from the training data itself. This is the common approach. We do not get new data, rather we extract some data from the training repository itself to create validation directory. So for this, what I'll do is I'll add paths to the directories. And for this, first thing I'll try is I'll go to my train repository from here. You can observe this is my train repository. I'll copy its path because this is the source it will consider. So I'll write here path of train directory, or better, existing training directory that we have. Then one more path I'll create from here itself with a new name, that is validation. You can create this validation folder manually also, or you can use code also for creating this validation directory folder. So I'll show you with the help of code, because manually anyone can create that easily. So I'll write here path for validation data. Now, if your validation directory is not created manually, then we will create validation directory if it does not exist. So in this case, what we'll do is if not OS path dot exists. In case if OS path doesn't contain validation directory that I have mentioned here. In case if my path doesn't contain this particular directory, in that case, what I'll do is I'll write make directories here. And inside this, I'll pass validation directory. So this validation directory, the link that I have already given, it will first search for this path. If this path does not exist, then it will create a directory with this name. So this is your choice, what name you want to give to this directory. Accordingly, you can pass the information. After this, we also need to identify what fraction of data we will move to validation directory. As I told you that from training directory only, some portion will switch to validation directory. So for this fraction of data, we need to decide. So we'll write here validation set fraction. And for this, I'm writing here validation split equal to 0.2. So this is 20% for validation basically. So 0.2 here represent your 20% for validation. So in this way, it will be easier to ensure that a specific amount of data is being passed to the validation directory. After this, what we'll do here is we will just iterate through each class of train directory. Because folder we have created, now we need to get the files into that folder. So for this, I'll write here the class names in OS list directory, because we have those directory inside, and the name of directory is currently train directory. The path for this we already have given here. So it will just identify both class names from there, and then it will create a new set based on class path join with the help of train directory and class name. So we'll just create a connected path for this information. Because observe what we have here. Like inside this train directory, there are two folders. So these are two classes of your data. So whenever we are extracting files from any of these two directories, they should be connected with the same class name. So that path we are joining here. Like whenever a picture, X-ray image is being captured from one of the folder, its class name must be associated with it. So that accordingly, it should be placed in the validation directory when we run this code. So that name will be captured automatically. In case if the directory we don't have in this format, then one alternative path option also we will add here. For this, the class path it will be creating, and then it will just continue. After this, now we will be creating corresponding class directory in the validation directory also. This we are getting from the train directory. And now the same thing we need to create in your second portion also, that is your validation directory. And for this, what we will do is simply within this, the task we are doing within this for loop only. So here I'll write create corresponding validation, or better we will write here class directory within validation directory, so that the two folders for the classes can be made accordingly. So what we will write here, same as what we have done earlier, validation class path I'm adding here, and OS path we need to join for this validation directory, and then class name, means these two things we need in the validation directory. And if not OS path exists, again it will check for the existence of OS path, then it will find that path from the recently created function that we have is validation class path. Or here also we will write make directory, and that will be taken from validation class path that we have already inserted here. Means the main directory is already created, but now two more folders we are trying to create for the class path, and that class path will be designed based on the two folders that we need from the main data itself. So based on that only we are creating those folders here. Now after this, we'll add list all files in the class directory, and for this files I'll pass here with the specific class paths that we are providing. And of course I'll do random shuffle for this, for all the files that we have within the repository. The reason for this is to ensure random selection of file, so that we do not create a biased validation dataset. Rather, we have random shuffling in the training data files, and then we pick any file randomly into the validation dataset, which is the most appropriate way to separate your validation repository. After this, the next part we will add here is calculate number of files for validation, and this is num validation files I'll add. And inside this, as I told you that earlier we created a split ratio for the files that was 20%, but 20% has to be calculated on the length of total data we have in the train repository. So that we are calculating here based on the number of files we have within the class path. I'm calculating length of those files, means what is the total number of files I have, and then from there itself I'll get my validation split, which is 20%. So accordingly the new set of files will be created. And now ultimately move files to the validation directory, and for this the file name in files we will pass, and number of validation files that we have extracted from here, all of them will be inserting in next. Then source file information we need to provide. So we'll connect path of source file, that is your initially extracted path from train repository, and then we have destination path. So I'll write it destination file, and here also we will pass join, and this time it will be validation class path and file name as it is. So we are just joining repositories, and then the shuttle function I'm using here. This will help us to move files from source to the destination. So first we will write the source information, and then we will write the destination information. And in this way, it should ensure that we are moving files from one place to other. And ultimately here we can use the print function to print the details that what it has moved. So we'll write here number of validation files that we have moved from which class name we have gathered that to validation directory, so that we get exact information about which class it has created with how many number of files. And here I'll write validation. Just a minute, I failed one part here. This one, validation set created successfully, we will write it here, and this should be fine. I think we have some typo also somewhere. Let me check if there is some issue. SRC file we have created. Repository we have created, then validation repository we have created. After this, the path for validation directory we have created. Then validation split we have added here. Then class name for train directory we have inserted, and then class path also we have inserted. After this, we are also checking if the class directory is present or not, and then we are creating corresponding class directory within. So for this, validation class path, then validation directory, and class name we have inserted. If pipe exists, then accordingly we are pushing the details. Then we are making a directory for validation class path. This is also fine. Random shuffle is also fine. Number of validation files. Validation split is also fine. Then we are just, for file names in file, I'm passing number of validation files inside. And then source file I have inserted. Okay, this one I need to update. This has to be class path, and this is also fine. So this should be one typo I had. Now this is fine. You can see we have moved 776 files from pneumonia to validation and 269 files from normal to validation directory, and directory is created successfully now. And if we want to verify, we can just go to this. You can see now we have a validation directory also here. Earlier we had only two, now we have validation directory, and inside this again normal and pneumonia dataset we can see. And within this, there will be several JPG images again that contain your X-ray images. So this is the repository creation process we are done with. And now we have 3 versions of the dataset that we can proceed with further to design our CNN model. So what I'll do here is, now I'll write here data loading and pre-processing. The pre-processing part here I'll do just based on some argumentation on training validation dataset, so that we can have more refined data to train our model. So first, for this, I'll define paths for my datasets. One is my base directory I'll be creating first. So that base directory I have is this one. or inside this, basically this one is the base directory within which we have all these 3 folders. So I'll just copy path of this and I'll pass it here. This is your data folder path. Then after this, I have to get path of my train directory. So for this, instead of getting this entire path, we can take help from OS path also. So that can also help us to join it directly with the name itself. Or you can call the entire path name, that is also your choice. So in my case, what I'll do is I'll just connect it with the folder name directly with the base directory, because after this, it will automatically find these next folders. Then I'll get my test data, and here the folder name is test. Similarly, I'll do with the validation data set. So I'll call it validation data, and here the name is validation because we have given this name only to the repository. So these are the 3 sections I'm creating here. After this, I'll use data augmentation for training images. Hopefully you have gone through some augmentation techniques earlier in some of the classes. If not, augmentation is just to create more replicas of your existing data set to improve the training process. So we can use some rotation techniques, some zooming techniques, some flipping technique, etc., to increase number of samples in the training data. So for this, what I'll do here is I'll use train data generation, and I'll pass here image data generator function that we have called in the beginning. If you remember, we have loaded it in the beginning itself. And inside this, I'll pass all the operations that I want to conduct on my data. One is a rescale option. You can pass different numbers into this. I'm just using some techniques here based on what type of data we have. A rescale technique I have passed. Similarly, rotation, range I'm passing. There are plenty of parameters that you can pass within the image data generator. If anyone is interested to know that what we contain inside image data generator, you can always go to the official data source. This is from the TensorFlow itself. We have loaded it from TensorFlow itself. So inside this, there are plenty of options that you can pass. You can see this is a long range of options that you can deploy while creating a new version of data for the training process. So out of this, I'm just using few options, not all of them. Just for a sample, I'm using few options out of that. Then zoom range I'm passing here. That is, for example, 0.2. Some random numbers only I'm passing here. You can try it with different versions of data sets later. Maybe some data sets will require different versions of this. So accordingly, you can use. And also I'm passing horizontal flip. These flipping techniques completely depend on what type of data you have in hand. If in your data flipping is genuine, then you can apply, otherwise you can avoid. Because for some data sets, like sometimes human images or animal images, flipping goes bad because that completely changes meaning of the picture. But with X-ray images, flipping works fine. There is no issue with that because X-rays people can see from different angles also. So accordingly, this augmentation process I have created here, and then this is for the training images. In case of my validation and testing images, we will apply only rescaling because only that is essential for your model. Otherwise, we will use raw data itself. We will not augment your validation and testing data set so that we can ensure a robust model in that case. So in this case, I'll write image data generator. Only rescaling we will need to make it compatible with the model, because the way we are processing trained data, only that scale it will pass in the model further. So only rescale will apply on the validation dataset. Same we will do for the testing dataset also. I'm creating this function together to be used further. After we have generated these augmentation functions, I can deploy them now on my directories directly, so that the population of training and testing or validation dataset can be generated accordingly. So what I'll write here, I'll pass here create data generators. So first I'll use here training generator, and for this I'll pass train data gen function that I have already deployed, and this will use flow from directory because we currently have dataset within the directory. We have not taken it into any other variable yet. So from there itself I am passing this. Then I have train directory, that is my current source of data for generating or for deploying this train data gen. And then the target size we will pass here. This is the file size we will accept within the model. So just a random number 150 cross 150 I'm passing for my target data size. So accordingly, the model input size we will mention. I'm keeping it 150 cross 150. So accordingly, within the CNN model, I have to pass size. Then the batch size I'm keeping is 32. This is essential for deep learning model building. So the same I'm doing here. And then class mode I'm keeping is binary because we have only two options, either normal or pneumonia. So binary class will go with it. So this is the train data generator I have used. The same I can do with other now, like for the validation data generator as well as for test data generator. So I'll pass here train data generator again. I'll convert it to validation. And here also we will pass validation test data gen flow that we have created here, because I told you on validation data set we will do only scaling. Remaining things we can keep as it is. Directory name we will change to validation directory this time. This is a recently created function, variable name if you observe. And the same thing I'll deploy for the testing dataset also, so that that can be also rescaled. So here we will change file name to testing dataset, and this function is common for both training as well as testing dataset. So once we are ready with this, it can help us to get an outcome on number of files that are obtained after augmentation. So now this is our count that we have for each repository. In the training, testing, and validation count, you can see these set belonging to two classes. So once your this pre-processing part is done, then we can build our machine learning model. And this time, as I told you, we will be building a simple CNN model that can utilize this pneumonia dataset directly. And for this, I'll be passing here, build the CNN model. This is the task we are going to do next. And for this, the first thing I'll deploy is my sequential model. If you remember, we have imported it right in the beginning from the Keras platform. So sequential model I have deployed. Then the layers that I have called in the beginning. First layer I'm deploying is convolution 2D, and the filter size and neuron number of neurons I am passing here. 3 cross 3 is my filter size. 32 neurons I'm deploying on the first layer. The activation function is ReLU in this case, and then input shape also we need to pass. And that, if you remember, we have 150 cross 150, and I'm passing it as a 3-channel information. So accordingly, input shape is 150 cross 150 cross 3. So this we need to ensure that it matches with the size that we have decided during the pre-processing stage. Now, after this, we are free to add any number of layers into our model. So for this, I'm passing here first maximum polling 2D layer. 2 cross 2 is my filter size for this, for instance. And then again, I'm using my convolution 2D layer from here. I'll pass it, but I'll change this time the number of neurons to 64, for instance. Input shape we need only at the first layer, so that we need not to pass here. After this, again, I'll pass one more max pooling layer. I'm not explaining these layers in detail because I believe you have done this already in the first day of this course. So I hope you can recall it from there directly. We are just combining multiple layers of CNN, and it is up to you how in-depth network you want to create with these CNN layers. So I'm passing one more layer here for the convolution 2D. Will not create a very dense network, but still few layers I'm passing here so that we can ensure like relevant accuracy from the model. Otherwise, later on, you can try different combinations of the layers also. So these three combinations of convolution 2D and Mexpool I have added with a specific filter size on Mexpool as well as on convolution layer. Number of neurons on convolution 2D I have updated stage after stage. Then ultimately I'm passing here the flatten layer and then the dense layer. Dense layer we generally keep closer to the output layer. So accordingly I'm passing it here with ReLU function itself. Then I'm also using one dropout layer and I'm switching off 50% connections, for example. You can try different connection switching also, like 20%, 40%, any of them you can try. I'm using 50% connection dropout during the training phase so that I can design a robust model based on this. And then on the final layer, final dense layer, I'll use sigmoid function because we are working on the binary classification, and most suitable activation function for that we can use is with this sigmoid on the output layer. Once we are done with this, I can compile this model, and in order to compile it, I'll just use directly a compile function, and within that compile function I'll pass the optimizer details, and I'll use just a basic optimizer, that is a RAM optimizer. You can try others also. You can try Adagrad, RSprop, or many others also are there, so you can try any of them from the Keras repository. Then the loss parameter I'm using is binary cross entropy. This will work fine because we are working on binary classification right now, so this is the most appropriate type of loss function you can try right now. The selection of matrices and loss parameters, etc., everything depends on the version of data you have initially. So based on that only, I'm choosing these matrices here. So after this, I can check my model summary quickly to know what kind of modeler we have created. So I'll just run this part. If all layers are aligned well, it should display our model summary. Now we can see that here. The number of parameters that it has adjusted for our model that are also seen. So this is a quick reference from the model itself. Once we are done with this, now the training process we can start, because the model building process we are done with. Now I'll write here, train the model. And in order to train this model, again, the technique is very simple. I'll use the history variable to store all the details of this model, and the fit sequence we can pass. If you remember, we use training data for model training purpose. So I'm going to train generator directly because this was the latest I have used for saving my augmented data files within the train generator variable. I have augmented data files along with the original data. So from here, I can call that directly. I'm passing here train generator, then number of epochs, depending upon for how much time you want to run this, you can set number of epochs. Because currently we may not have much time, so I'll keep just 5 epochs. But generally, for good accuracy with your model, you need more number of epochs for better accuracy. But since we will have limited time and this is going to be a bigger model considering the quantity of images we have, so it will take time to train. So 5 epochs only I'm keeping right now. And for validation of this model, I'm using validation generator that we have already created. So if this is all fine, then we can start running this model, and the epochs we can see once it starts. And depending upon the batches that it is taking from data by default, because I have not decided any batch size during model fitting process, so automatically it will take some batches of data, and accordingly it will start training process for our model. So while this training process goes on, because it will take time, since we have so many data files to process, I can do the next thing in between, that is to evaluate the model. At least the code we can write in the meanwhile, and in that time it will also finish. So for this, what I'll do is evaluate on the test data, because evaluation we always do on the test data. So for this, I'm calculating test loss and test accuracy. These two things will be automatically taken during the training process on training data and validation data. So this time we are gathering it for the test data only. And for this, the model that we are fitting right now here, that only we are using for the evaluation purpose. And inside this, now I'll have to pass my test generator, because this contains my test data files. And within this, I'm passing test accuracy, and that will include information from the recently created variable, this test accuracy. And I'll make sure that I get accuracy up to 2 decimal places with the floating point number. So that information I have passed here. This is how we control the number of floating points in your output variables. So I need it up to 2 decimal places. So accordingly, the floating point sequence I have controlled here. Then the next part I'll write here is generate predictions. And for this, y predict and y true, both we will put up in the proper format. And for this, first thing I'll do is model dot predict, and this will be done on test generator. And here I'm putting a threshold of 0.5, because we have binary classification approach here. So if the prediction is greater than 5, we will put it in one section. If that is less than 0.5, we'll put it in other category. So accordingly, we are putting that information here also for the comparison purpose. And as type, I'll pass here, that will be in the form of int32, because once it is generated into the sequence, we'll need only integer 0 and 1 for the binary classes, and then I'm using the flatten function, so that the final outcome I can find either from class 0 or class 1. Then the test generator I'm using on specific classes here. So this will create are both comparative sections of the generated predictions as well as the actual target that we have within the test generator folder. Then we can create the classification report for the comparison purpose, and here I'll write the classification report, and within this I'll have to pass the information on classification report function with value y true that we have right here. And the second value is y predict. This is what is predicted by the model itself. And then the target names that will be printed on the confusion or the classification report, that will be two forms. First is normal, and second is based on the disease that we are trying to detect. So pneumonia we are passing here. And one more thing we want to design is a confusion matrix. You can create it in the form of a plot also. I'll be using it directly in the normal format, in the normal print format. So confusion matrix we are passing here, and I'll use the confusion matrix function that we have called right in the beginning. In the first code cell, we have already imported this. So again, the same things I'm passing here, and we will just print this confusion matrix here. So this print sequence also I have passed. This one I may have to keep within inverted commas because this is static text, and then the dynamic one I have passed below this. So as soon as your model training process is done, currently we are on the second epoch here, then we will be able to evaluate this model by utilizing these initial details from here. So one more task we can do in the meanwhile is to visualize results. That code also we will pass in the meanwhile. And for that, I'll write here visualize result section. And as you remember, right in the beginning, we have already imported matplotlib as PLT in that case. So what I'll write here is first section is plotting training and validation accuracy is the first thing. And then plotting training and validation loss is other thing. Just two things we will do. And with this plt.plot history, because this history is the variable we have used initially to save our records from the trained model. So first thing I'm getting from here is accuracy, and label for this I'll make precisely train accuracy, because that will be training accuracy, basically that will plot first. Then the same thing we will do for the validation accuracy. So I'll pass it here, and here I'll write validation accuracy. This is the by default terminology used by the model. So the same I'm using. And here we can pass any information. So that in our case is validation accuracy that we have updated. If we need legend in our final plot, so that also we can pass, so that the colors given for validation and training accuracy, they are represented with the legends for precise understanding. Then I'm writing here accuracy over epochs is my plot title, and then I can write the show function here. So this includes my first plotting sequence. The similar kind of plotting sequence now we can create for the validation dataset. So for this again, I'll write here the plot, and from the history variable again, I'll try to get, this time it will be loss. And then label for the loss parameter we can pass is train loss or training loss, whatever you want to keep. Similarly, the plot sequence for the second portion, I'll add here history with validation loss, and here again the label we will pass is validation loss, or you can give the complete name as validation loss here. Then the legend we will pass, then the title we will pass, and title this time is loss over epochs that we can use, and then ultimately the show function we can use here. So this will help us to see the accuracy over the epochs along with the loss parameter. So it completely depends what type of plots you want to create. We have just created some sample plots here. As soon as this training process is done, we'll be able to see the outcomes of this here. We'll be able to see the plots for this entire sequence. So currently it is working. It is on second epochs. So we can wait maybe for 5 more minutes as it is executing, and maybe within 5-7 minutes it will finish its execution, and then we will be able to see the evaluation and we'll be able to visualize the results. Although with the current number of epochs that I have updated in this evaluation process, the accuracy and loss parameter will not be very good. We cannot expect them so close to each other in case of validation and training dataset. But still, this is just for the demonstration purpose we are using. Later on, you can increase the number of epochs, and maybe a better accuracy you can achieve with this kind of dataset. And since this application we are using for pneumonia dataset, which is again a very critical scenario in healthcare industry, and we can use some advanced deep learning algorithms to assure timely diagnosis of this disease, and that is possible with the help of these kind of model deployments. Once you are able to get maybe close to 100% accuracy, then definitely you will be able to achieve better outcomes with it. So the model training is going on. I think in the meanwhile, I'll go back to the PPT that we were using in the last class, and we left few things from there. So I'll discuss that in the meanwhile as the training is going on. There were few relevant concepts that we have missed from discussion at that time. At least few applications or case studies that you should know from the domain. Maybe if you are planning to conduct any research study in future, these case studies may help you to lead your case. So first case study we are taking is like AI in radiology for detecting lung cancer. And in this case, The main problem is that lung cancer is one of the leading cause of cancer related deaths across the world at present, and therefore the early detection is one of the most important thing to ensure better survival rates, but it is challenging as well. In case of traditional diagnosis issues that we have, first is to have manual analysis of x-rays and ct scans, that is always prone to human error, and sometimes false negatives are always possible there, and it leads to wrong treatment. So for this, what we can do is we can at least train some models on some real world data sets. These are just some examples that you can consider. WHO is also providing some data sets on this particular problem, and you can see it based on some initial stats that they are providing, that how this lung cancer issue is affecting world at present. So based on this stat, what you can do is there are some key technologies that you can use from the deep learning domain. One is CNN, that I have already shown you with the help of one case study right now. That kind of deployment you can consider, and we can do this on large data sets that such as DCIDRI dataset is widely available. You can access it online and you can start working on this. In order to work this, the CNN or similar kind of models will first detect any kind of nodules present in your images, so that they can be based on the sensitivity level, they can be classified as benign or malignant, and accordingly relevant techniques we can recommend for the treatment. Some real world examples if you want to take is, this is a case study already demonstrated by Google Health AI, and they have achieved 94.4% accuracy in this case to identify malignant cases, and this is definitely a very useful case study. However, accuracy is not close to 100, but still with this they have reduced the false positive by 11% in comparison to radiologists. So this is a great outcome they have achieved with this initial case study. Some benefits we can consider in this case is like faster diagnosis they are providing with their case studies, and then reduced workload for radiologists along with improved accuracy. These kind of deployed methods, or like perfectly working methods, can be deployed in real hospitals like Mayo Clinic, etc. They already have these kind of deployments where they can test patient symptoms or x-ray samples on their AI models directly to lead the diagnosis process. And the matrices that can be utilized while leading these case studies is either by reduction of diagnosis time you can consider in your research, or maybe early detection you can consider. Any of these parameters you can think of working in your PhD research studies as well. Then further, we have one more case like AI in ophthalmology. And in this case, we talk about diabetic retinopathology. And this basically is one of the leading causes for blindness among adults. And there are some early symptoms and a variety of issues that patients may experience at early stage. And if we can identify them on time, possibly it is easier to diagnose the risk of blindness. Based on the stats obtained from WHO, it is seen that there are more than 463 million that are globally affected with diabetes, and 1 in 3 is going to develop DR in that case. This diabetic retinopathy issue, that is the blindness risk basically. So this is increasing by 95% if the early intervention is not made. So in order to maintain this problem, or in order to deal with the crises that we can have with this increasing cases of diabetes, we can propose some key technologies, again with the help of different versions of CNN. You have various versions of the CNN these days. Researchers have deployed several new models based on CNN fundamentals. So any of them you can use on datasets like Messenger dataset is popularly used, or IPEX dataset is already used for this purpose. So you can try any of these. Similarly, in order to work, it basically has to detect these important signs of DR from available images or available data set, and based on that it can even classify the severity level, whether it is mild, moderate or severe, etc. So all these things it can identify ahead of time. Again, Google DeepMind is working on this. They have identified 92% accuracy, but still we have a scope. As a researcher, we can build something new on the topic. Furthermore, we can talk about few challenges that you will experience in this case while deploying deep learning models in the healthcare industry. Data scarcity is one of the biggest challenge because getting quality data set from the hospitals directly is the biggest problem, because that information is containing some sensitive data about patients, and hospitals do not agree to share that data for the privacy concerns. So how in future we are trying to get that data, or maybe federated learning is going to help us, those issues we need to keep in mind. And data imbalance also, this is another case, because for the disease condition you will find some issues, and for others you will find limited areas. I can see that the model is running on maybe someone's end and they are sharing the accuracy. This is good to know that at least someone is implementing side by side and they are sharing their accuracy, although I have not shared code side by side. But thank you very much for sharing this. This is good to see. That's great. So I'll see mine also if it is close enough. I'm on the fourth epoch right now. So let us see what we get. Although we cannot always say that we will see common output values, because we are working on neural networks right now. The base of CNN is neural network. And in that, always the weights are random. The initial weight initialization is always random. So output may be different on different user interfaces. You may get different output, I may get different output. And that is also a point of research, how you optimize the weights of a CNN model or a neural network model to always get same results. Like if you want to lock your model accuracy at 99.8% and it should stay the same, you may have to optimize weights of your CNN model in that case, so that it stays on the same accuracy every time and it does not change its output based on the random shuffle in the weights behind. So that point we always need to keep in mind, especially when working on the neural networks, because weight updates is a common scenario in that case. So it is still working. We'll have to wait maybe for 2-3 minutes more. And in the meanwhile, I'll get back to the challenges that we have in the list. So we are talking about another issues, that is like model interpretability and explainability also are some issues, because when we are working on real-time patient data, we need proper approval from clinicians as well as regulatory authorities, because there are several uh, trial issues involved behind while dealing with medical data, privacy concerns of the patients, as well as the protocols followed by the hospitals and the governments. All those things we have to deal with. So that increases the chances of rare availability of good quality data. So these things may be some good procedures for MOU formation with the medical institutions, or some other techniques. With time, if we can update, and this time like blockchain etc is also showing great ways to do data transfers without hampering personal information of the people. So maybe those technologies we can integrate further to get better outcomes with this. Ethical and privacy concerns also come in the same category. There are some challenges with the large scale data, with GDPR and HIPAA, like privacy laws at national and international level. So we need to keep them in mind all the time. And other than this, it is about technical barriers also in AI deployment. Like if we consider for the medical domain, if we have to design some solution, it should be relevant to what problems people are facing in the medical domain, and that requires a cross cultural intelligence. Like if a technology background person is trying to design something for the medical people, they may initially not have complete information about how to deal with that data. So chances are that we need to lead a multidisciplinary research. We need experts from the medical domain also to validate our results. We need their suggestions also on how to deal with the data, or what specific challenges we may have to face throughout the process. So it requires a proper optimization of inputs from technical background people as well as from the people from medical domain. and it should ensure that we are getting most relevant outputs that are useful for the end users, which are either patients, caregivers, or doctors. So whatever system we are trying to design, it should be useful for them. And as I told you, that explainable AI is one of the widely accepted solution for this, that we can utilize for building some like more focused applications, and they can also foster collaboration between AI experts, clinicians, and regulators also, because explainable AI gives proper reasons for everything, how the predictions are being made, what kind of suggestions it can do. So everything we can do with the help of this new branch of AI with time. So let us see back on our accuracy point. If the we are on the last epoch now, so this should be close enough. Let us wait for a few seconds here, and then it should be done. We are close enough to 131 batch size. I've run only 5 epochs, so this should be fine. They are updating the validation for the last epoch now. I'll just take 2-3 minutes more, and then we can wind up the session. So the validation accuracy is also done now. I can evaluate my model right here. Let us see what accuracy we get with the model. And then we can also visualize our results side by side. So we can see around 92% accuracy, which looks like a good option with a very basic model. And this is running few epochs here. Again, 5 epochs it will be running basically, because that is the initial setting we have done. But still, in test set, we have lesser number of images to process, so it will not take much time. And here we can see this is the output we are getting, the confusion matrix and the accuracy, etc. We are able to see. And with this, the results also I can see here. Okay, I have some typo right here. This one has to be in scare brackets. And this has to be small v.